There's 3 temperatures to remember. 145 degrees Fahrenheit for steaks, roasts, chops. 160 degrees Fahrenheit is for all types of ground meat, except for poultry. And then all poultry, ground, even up to whole birds, 165 degrees Fahrenheit is what you're looking for.
September is Food Safety Education Month, a time for reminding people about some steps they can take to protect themselves and their family against foodborne illness. Kansas State University food safety specialist Karen Blakeslee, who is also coordinator of the university's Rapid Response Center, says washing hands and surfaces, using a food thermometer, refrigerating leftovers promptly, and keeping raw foods away from cooked and ready-to-eat foods are principles that everyone should be following. On today's Sound Living, safe food handling practices. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. Blakeslee encourages everyone to be aware of food safety's 4 core principles and to put them into practice every day. Karen, September is Food Safety Education Month, and in this case, sometimes a little information actually goes a long way because there's really just 4 key things to focus in on.
Yeah, that's right. And so those 4 key things are to clean, to cook your food safely, to chill it safely, and to keep your raw foods separated from your cooked foods. So it's 4 really simple things to remember that can really reduce a majority of the risks with foodborne illness.
Let's start with clean and go a little bit more in depth. We're really talking about washing hands, surfaces, utensils, and in some cases, the produce itself.
Absolutely, yeah. Your first defense on handling any kind of food is to always wash your hands. It's a simple step, and taking those 20 seconds to thoroughly wash your hands, get a good lather going, get some bubbles going with some water, and rub your hands together for a good 20 seconds, rinse them and dry them, and then you're good to go. And then also during food preparation, if you've handled any raw foods like raw meat and then you're ready to make a salad or something like that, always wash your hands before you move on to that salad, as an example. And then, after you're done preparing the food too, it's always a good idea to wash your hands. So it may sound like a lot of steps, but really the more often you do it, the more intuitive or more easy it becomes. And honestly, you just hardly even think about doing it. Just do it. That's the main thing, and take that responsibility.
Almost becomes a habit and second nature. You almost feel strange if you don't do it.
Exactly. I'm one of those that, after I crack open an egg, I just have to wash my hands. I just don't like that slimy feel, for one thing. But I also know that it's really a safe thing to do after handling a raw egg. And then also, the equipment that you use. If you've had raw meat on one plate, don't use that for the cooked finished product. Those simple little things like that can really reduce a lot of things. So you can wash that plate in between. If you just happen to run out of plates or don't have any extras, wash that. Same thing with utensils.
And keeping the surfaces clean, I know we're hearing a lot about that right now because of COVID, but keeping the surfaces clean also a good idea.
Absolutely, yeah. If you've, say you're preparing some chicken for the grill, and maybe you've made a marinade and you've put that chicken in the bag, well, that chicken may have splattered juice, at some point. Maybe you didn't see it, but it's always a good idea after you've got everything taken care of to wipe down your countertops just to make sure they're good and clean.
You mentioned poultry, and that is really one thing we don't have to wash.
That's exactly right. Any kind of meat, you do not have to wash it at all. It's kind of a misconception that some people think that is a good idea, but actually you're creating a situation where you could be splattering meat juices in places where you don't know where it's going. And so there's absolutely no reason to wash any kind of meat, whether it's chicken or beef or pork.
Now, you do want to wash produce.
Absolutely, and just use plain old water. You don't have to add anything to it. You don't need to add any cleaning solutions to it. Please don't do that. You're really causing a whole other set of issues if you do that. There's been a lot of information that's come out in the last few months about washing produce with, even using bleach. Please do not do that. All you have to do is just use plain water and turn on the faucet, hold the food underneath the running water, scrub it if you can. For example, like potatoes, those firm produce type foods, you can scrub those with a scrub brush or even rub them with your fingers. But plain old water, there's plenty of research out there that shows that water really is very effective.
I think a lot of people think about this in terms of leafy greens, but we also want to be doing it with watermelon and cantaloupe and other fruits.
Exactly, yeah. On those leafy greens, pull those apart, really rub them between your fingers to get into the little cracks and crevices. But, we've got cantaloupe and watermelon out now, and you always want to scrub those first because they've been growing on the ground. They still have dirt on them. Put it under running water, get your scrub brush out, and brush them down first before you cut them open. Because if you don't, there's been evidence showing that if you cut open a dirty watermelon where there's dirt on the outside, your knife can transfer that dirt to the flesh. And oftentimes people don't wash it again. So just wash it first, and that'll help eliminate a lot of issues.
You mentioned the separating part of this, and that's really just trying to keep those raw foods away from cooked and ready-to-eat foods?
Exactly, yeah. Your raw meats away from your freshly made salads and things like that. That also applies to utensils, like I just mentioned, with plates and knives and cutting boards. Either wash them in between or use two separate pieces of equipment to keep things separated.
When we talk about cooking, we're really talking food thermometer because that's your best weapon, isn't it?
It is your best weapon, especially when you're cooking meat products, but it can be used for a lot of other products too. So there's simple food thermometers out there, the little dial thermometers or the digital thermometers. They're really not very expensive. It just depends on what kind of bells and whistles you want on your thermometer because they've got some pretty high-tech ones now where you can hook them Bluetooth-wise to your cell phone so you can monitor temperatures if you got it on the grill. But there's 3 temperatures to remember, and the first one is 145 degrees Fahrenheit for steaks, roasts, chops, things like that. And then 160 degrees Fahrenheit is for all types of ground meat except for poultry. So that would be like ground beef, ground pork, ground lamb. And then all poultry, ground poultry, even up to whole birds, 165 degrees Fahrenheit is what you're looking for. And that's just the minimum temperature. And you only need to get it up to that temperature for around 30 seconds or so. So it really helps benefit the quality of the product in the end, too. In many ways, it helps keep you from overcooking. And again, once you've checked it, maybe you think it's about done, check the temperature, clean that thermometer before you use it again. That way you've got a good, clean stick of the thermometer every time you use it.
When it comes to the chilling part of this, we're really trying to get those leftovers into the refrigerator within at least a couple of hours.
Yeah, this time of year, any time of year, actually, it's best to get leftovers in the refrigerator within 2 hours. Now, if you've been outside at a picnic or something like that, and it's hot outside, that goes down to 1 hour. It's a good idea to get things on ice, get them in the refrigerator. That way you reduce the chances of bacteria growing at that, what we call the temperature danger zone, between 40 and 140 degrees. So get it down to 40 degrees as soon as you can.
Now, I know we've talked about this in the past, but when we're doing certain leftovers and storing those leftovers, we want to try and spread things out like a soup or a chili, something like that?
Yeah, casseroles fit into that, those large products that you've made. You want to divide them up. I call it divide and conquer. Divide them up, put them into smaller pans with a lid on them that are roughly about 2 inches in depth. They will chill a lot faster, and then you've got an easy way to have leftovers for the next day. So it's always good to do that. It really does take a long time if you put a whole casserole or a whole pot of soup into the refrigerator. Really takes a long time for that to really cool down. So divide it up and it'll get chilled a whole lot faster.
And if you really have a lot that you're not going to be able to eat within 2 or 3 days, you probably, actually not probably, you do want to freeze the other portion.
Yeah, the leftovers should be used within, 4 to 5 days or so, but even sooner is better. So if you see that you're not going to get it used up, put it in their freezer, and then you've got a meal ready for another day when you're in a rush, and then you can pop it in the microwave and heat it up real quick. So freezing can really help you save food, and it helps save food waste, too, so that you don't have leftovers, sitting there for a couple weeks, and then something might be growing on them, and then it's not edible at all. So it's a really good way to help reduce a lot of food waste.
You mentioned the microwave, and that makes me think about the touch test for meat. We don't recommend that. You use the thermometer. Do you also want to avoid using some sort of touch test to see whether or not your food is hot enough coming out of the microwave?
Yeah, your thermometer is still your best friend. And always stir, if possible, stir those foods that you're heating up in the microwave so that they heat more evenly. And then use your thermometer. You want to reheat leftovers to 165 degrees.
It doesn't take a lot for bacteria to grow, does it?
No, it really doesn't. And some foods, even though they've been cooked already, if you've got dirty hands, you could easily contaminate them with one bacteria that's called Staphylococcus. And that one really likes to grow on foods that have already been cooked and cooled and things like that. So that boils down to not handling food safely. And that one, for example, if it would be there and you ingest it and you start feeling ill within maybe 6 to 12 hours. So some of these can happen pretty quick. Others can take 2 or 3 days before you realize, I don't feel so well. So it's really hard to know what you have because a lot of the symptoms are the same for many different bacteria. That's why safe food handling is so important to help reduce the risk of becoming ill from foodborne illness.
And some age groups are a little bit at higher risk than others?
Yeah, the young kids, the little ones, we want to make sure their food is good and safe, but also the elderly and also anybody that's immunocompromised with a health condition because of medications they're on, their illness themselves. And as we get older, our immune system, it changes. So we can't fight off these things as easily as we used to. So keep in mind, you want to help protect yourself, but also protect your family members too.
Not uncommon to see recalls from manufacturers these days, and that is something that we need to be aware of when the recall is made. We need to kind of be watching out for these. Yeah,
watch out for those, and there's something being recalled almost every day, and they may not always hit the big headlines. Some of them are really small recalls, but it's still important. So pay attention to those, and if you do have a food that is involved in a recall, it's best to either throw it away or take it back to the store where you bought it and get a refund. But don't think that you can cook it and make it safe because you just don't know what that is. You don't know how much is actually grown during the time you've had it, if that bacteria is really on there. So you really can't, in that case, push the save button, I guess you could say. So be smart about that. Pay attention to that. They will usually tell you what specific brands, where it's sold at, even down to lot numbers and things like that. So take a look at the packages and pay attention. And then, again, don't eat it. It's just not worth the risk.
CDC.gov has a lot of information, and you also have a lot of information on your Rapid Response Center website.
I do there, and I also have even more information on our food safety website, which is ksre.ksu.edu/food safety. And there's lots of links to information. There's even links in the news section about recalls, for example. So take a look at that and be informed, but be smart and handle your food safely.
That's K-State Research and Extension Food Safety Specialist and Coordinator of Kansas State University's Rapid Response Center, Karen Blakeslee. If you have specific food safety questions, contact your local county or district extension office. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.